Miss me? Your boy is back in the leather chair here for today's review, the most underrated anime of the past 20 years, in my opinion. That is Baccano. Baccano the anime is based on the Japanese light novel series written by Ryogo Narita, the same guy who wrote Durarara. One point I need to make before we go any farther into the review is that if you do watch this show, you will pretty much have to speedrun it, and not just because it's awesome, but also out of necessity. The first time I started watching Baccano, I treated it like it was a regular anime, sometimes going consecutive days without watching an episode, just because life got in the way. It happens to all of us. But once I did start resuming watching it, I was just completely clueless as to what was happening in the show, and by episode 11, I had had enough and decided to drop it. That was a massive mistake on my part, and luckily for me, I picked it back up. You can't treat this show like it's a conventional anime. It doesn't have a singular storyline where it follows in a linear fashion. It has 3 different plots to where it bounces around from character to character and is told out of chronological order. If you're not paying attention to what's happening on the show, you're going to be more lost than Oceanic Airlines Flight 815. In fact, in the very first scene of the first episode, 2 of the characters, Gustave St. Germain and Carol, basically tell you that, hey, this show is going to be all over the place, so strap in and get ready. But Josh, you might be asking yourself, if this show bounces around more than the Kardashian between a lineup of NBA players, then why do you hold it in such high regard? And to that I say, because it's freaking unbelievable! While the story itself might take multiple viewings for you to fully understand, one thing that I guarantee you will not be disappointed by is the cast of characters. Each character in this show is a blast to watch, sometimes literally. From the eccentric pair of robbers, to the mafia families, to the psychopathic serial killers, and beyond, you will not find a single disappointing moment when these guys are on screen. Honestly, the only disappointing part, in my opinion, of this show is the fact that it only has 16 episodes, despite the fact that the light novel series is pretty freaking massive. I mean, a show like Durarara, and no offense to anything about Durarara, because it's a solid show. But the fact that that show goes on for as long as it does, but Baccano only gets 16 episodes when there are so much source material to go through, that's honestly the only disappointing part about it, is the fact that it's not longer. That's the mark of high praise for a show, when I'm complaining that there isn't more. If I do have to have one complaint, and this is a very nitpicky complaint, is the fact that there is a lot of gore in this show. Now, I'm not somebody that gets sick when looking at blood, especially when it's fake animated blood. But still, there should be a limit to the amount of blood that can spew out of people's bodies. Honestly, by the end of the show, I felt like there was enough blood that was spewed that it could fill up an entire frickin' ocean by itself. Moses might have parted the Red Sea, but he ain't got nothing on Claire Stanfield parting the blood ocean. One thing I did mention earlier was that there are 3 different plots in this show, but there are also only 16 episodes. That might seem like it's completely rushed, because how can you fit that much plot into that few episodes? But the show manages to do it in a spectacular fashion. The 3 plots in this show are basically separated into Mafia Turf War, a train heist, and an immortality elixir. Think of it as Full Metal Alchemist going on a head-on collision with The Godfather and Murder on the Orient Express. In my personal opinion, I do think that Narita, the author of the light novel series for Baccano, did find some inspiration from Agatha Christie's The Murder on the Orient Express, because the Flying Pussyfoot, and yes, the train in this show is called the Flying Pussyfoot, go ahead and get your giggles down on that one, I know I certainly have, but it does have a lot of similarities to the Orient Express, just kind of like in a methed up, more psychopathic way than the Orient Express. A majority of the show is spent in Prohibition America during the 1920s and 30s, hence why I'm dressed like I am. I gotta fit the era, right? And while the train heist portion of the show is freaking awesome, I do feel blue-balled by the fact that most of the characters that are on the Flying Pussyfoot, we don't hardly ever get to see them anywhere else outside of the train. We don't get to see them exploring Manhattan or Chicago or any of the outside world. And I feel that's a shame, because in the light novels, they do. And it's why I'm clamoring for a Season 2. Despite the fact that this show aired in 2007, 14 years ago to the time of this recording, I still want a Season 2. It's never too late for a Season 2. But of course, I couldn't live with myself if I went the entire length of this video without mentioning the soundtrack to Baccano. Real talk, This is the best soundtrack I've ever heard, not just from any anime, from any piece of media, ever. Whether it's a movie, TV show, video game, anime, whatever. This is the best soundtrack I personally have ever heard. I love every single song on this soundtrack. In this instance, the OST stands for Orgasmic Saxophone Titillation. Please don't click off the video. It may seem like I'm overselling this, but I promise you, every single song on this soundtrack is sensational. The fact that a Japanese studio of all places was able to capture the American Prohibition era jazz and music in such a perfect manner it honestly warms my heart. It's why I love Japan. They put their heart and soul into everything they do. And I truly appreciate it. I'll be leaving a couple links in the description below for the complete soundtrack. I hope you guys listen to it on your own accord and adore it as much as I do. And now, with all that being said, it is time for my final grade. Baccano gets a, without a doubt, A+, 10 out of 10 from me. I implore you to not make the same mistake that I made and drop it because the storyline is too tough to follow. Just give it a chance, have a little patience, and really just binge watch it because A, it's great, and B, you might have to actually get a comprehension of what's happening. But just because the storyline is complex doesn't make it bad. Now, with all that being said, I promise you my next review won't take 5 months to make. So, anyway, thank you for watching. And also, what are you doing watching me still? Go watch Baccano.